This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a smackdown between two Samsung Ultrabooks. And in the end, it's going to tell you there's just no perfect world, really. If these guys could marry and have kids, it would be the best thing ever. But we've got the Samsung Series 7 Ultra here. That's an Ultrabook we reviewed a little over a month ago. Really nice aluminum chassis, full 1080p touchscreen display on that guy. And right here, the Samsung Series 9. This is the latest and greatest version of the Series 9. Also the 1080p display, but not touch. A pound lighter. Not that the Series 7 is heavy at 3.5, 3.6 pounds, but this guy's 2.6 pounds and even skinnier. We're going to look at him now. Well, here's one of those funny smackdowns where no matter what, Samsung wins, don't they? Here we have it. The Samsung Series 7 Ultra. We first reviewed that about a month ago. And the latest generation of the Samsung Series 9. This is the 900X3E model, for those of you who are familiar with Samsung's model numbering. The latest generation with the slightly tweaked Ivy Bridge CPU, 2.0 gigahertz i7 in here. And you've got the full 1080p HD display. Now the Samsung Series 7 Ultra also has a full 1080p HD display. This guy has an IPS display, or Ultra, and this one unknown. I'm thinking it's an AFFS display, which is like IPS, maybe a little bit better. And either way, you're getting IPS-like viewing angles, incredible sharpness, some very nice contrast. But the big difference right here is touch versus non-touch. Samsung Series 7 Ultra has a glossy touchscreen. For those of you who say, hey, I want to use Windows 8 with a touchscreen, understandably, because, well, it's been designed to be easy to use like that. Samsung Series 7 Ultra is for you. Samsung Series 9 does not have a touchscreen still, but it has a matte display. Some of you won't get a true matte display on anything that's a touchscreen, so you get better perceived brightness. You don't have the glare. You have it's just a gorgeous looking machine. Happily, this is paired with a really excellent trackpad, so things like moving around even in a live tile UI are not too painful, but it's still not the same as touching the screen. Now, you know who you are. If you're one of those people who says, I don't want to reach over there and touch the screen, that's just, I don't do that. I spend most of my life in desktop world here in what looks like Windows 7 land. Well, you get the idea, then this could work out fine for you. So, decision point number one. Second point is price. Samsung Series 7 Ultra sells for around $999 for the model that's right now exclusive to Best Buy, which is the only model you can get in the US. Gets a little bit more complicated when you talk about what you folks have overseas. You have more price points and you have some more options. Our Samsung Series 7 Ultra in the US has Intel HD 4000 integrated graphics, but overseas there is a low mid-range AMD Radeon dedicated graphics option as well. So there you have it. A little bit confusing, but we're going to go with the US spec since, well, we're in the US here, and that means Intel HD 4000 graphics. $999 gets you a Core i5 CPU, 4 gigs of RAM. And for the Samsung Series 9 with the 1080p display, you're looking at $1399, though most retailers right now are going down to $1299, so say $300 more. You're getting a Core i7, 2 gigahertz here, so a little bit faster, 4 gigs of DDR3 RAM, and a 128 gig SSD on both of these guys. Now, one thing that makes the Samsung Series 7 Ultra a little extra special in Ultrabook land is you can actually upgrade the RAM. It has 2 standard RAM slots, 2 standard DIMM slots. Again, that's for the US version with integrated graphics. If you get the dedicated graphics model, you only get 1 RAM slot for upgrades, and some RAM is soldered on the motherboard. So for those of you who really feel like you might need more memory, say you run virtual machines or you do a video editing, then that's certainly compelling. And it's less expensive, too. Let me just say this. I know people get all worried about the RAM, and for those of you who are less technical and just think, maybe I need more RAM and I don't know why, you probably don't. When I'm running Ultrabooks with 4 gigs of RAM or full-size notebooks, I have Photoshop running, I have web browser with many tabs open, I have email running, I have a couple of other apps in the background, lightweight apps, and I can't exceed 4 gigs for the life of me. The last big difference between these guys is their weight. Now, they both have aluminum casings, but the Samsung Series 9 is always one of the thinnest and lightest guys on the block. This is 2.55 pounds, 0.5 inches. You can see it's just crazy, right? It's gorgeous. It's thin. It's sculpted. It's probably the nicest looking Ultrabook on the market. Samsung Series 7 Ultra is no slouch. It weighs about a pound more, though. You're talking about 3.5, 3.6 pounds right here. Not as thin. Still a very nice aluminum casing right here. A good looking, but a little bit more staid, a little bit understated, not a whole lot of style going on here. Quality looking components, well put together, simple lines, no curve or anything going on here, no sculpting. So less fancy design, but still very nice, high quality stuff. If we take a look at the ports over here, you can see Samsung Series 7 Ultra is going to win. If you're looking at something to be your primary machine, then you're going to want more ports. You don't want to have dongles, that kind of thing. It's going to win because look here. You get Ethernet, drop down little port. You don't see that too often on Ultrabooks. Full-size HDMI, not micro HDMI. No little dongles or special cables needed. Here's your USB 3.0 port right here. There's our combo headphone jack. That's our mini VGA. You'd have to get Samsung's $40 dongle to use that. The Samsung Series 9 has that as well, too, for those of you who want a straight VGA adapter. Or you could just go and pick up a HDMI to VGA adapter yourself, unless you want to use both at once. This side here, we have two more USB 2.0 ports. Kind of wish one of those was 3.0 again, but it's not. And then we've got our SD card slot right here. On the Series 9, we've got, well, there's our charging port right here, USB 3.0 port. This is our micro HDMI port. And this is the Ethernet port, proprietary, but it comes with the little dongle adapter right here. So you get Ethernet with either machine. You're just going to have to carry around the little dongle with this guy. And on this side, we have a USB 2.0 port, combo mic headphone jack. And this is the mini VGA port that would require an optional dongle adapter. And one other important point is, yes, you can open up the back on this guy. It's just little Phillips head screws, pretty easy to do, but pretty much nothing is upgradable on here except for the mSATA SSD drive. RAM is soldered on board, for example, so what you got is what you got. With the Samsung Series 7 Ultra, you can get a little bit more adventurous with your upgrades. This guy, too, has about 10 teeny little Phillips head zero screws, and you take those off, and there's a little plastic retaining ring under here. We have a video about how to take this off if you want to. It's a little catchy here, a little tricky to get off. But once you take this off, 2 RAM slots, as I said, in here, and you can upgrade your mSATA drive, and then there's the socketed wireless card, too. Both of these have Intel Wi-Fi 6235N, that's Wi-Fi 802.11 BGN dual band with WiDi support, so you're looking at the same thing there. So a little bit more tinkerable over here. Now, in terms of horsepower and performance, you're looking at fairly similar stuff, but the Samsung Series 9 edges ahead because it has a Core i7 instead of a Core i5. We've got the Core i5 in the Samsung Series 7 Ultra right now. That's the only way you can get it. Both of these use the second generation of the Ivy Bridge CPU for a little bit extra speed there. So we have 1.8 gigahertz, 3337U i5 on the Samsung Series 7 Ultra. And on the Series 9, we have the 3537U Core i7 at 2 gigahertz, so a little bit of a speed bump on that. Both of these have that 128 gig SSD, and they both have 4 gigs of RAM. But I've upgraded the RAM in the Samsung Series 7 Ultra, which is this guy right here on our speed test score, so I have dual channel level performance for faster memory. And you can see what we've got here, 6.9 per processor on our Samsung Series 7 Ultra versus 7.1 on the Samsung Series 9. RAM, because I've upgraded to my dual channel configuration, memory is 7.4, really nice high number on the Samsung Series 7 Ultra, 5.9 on our Samsung Series 9. Graphics also enjoys a boost, as did a couple of firmware updates and software updates on the Samsung Series 7 Ultra because it's been on the market a bit longer. So our desktop graphics is 5.5. Now, when I first got it, it was at 4.6. So going to dual channel and getting some software updates really made the difference. We're at 4.5, conversely, on the Samsung Series 9. Now, some software updates might tweak that a bit, but it's probably never going to achieve the same score for what synthetic benchmarks like the Windows Experience Index are actually worth. They're not really very, very accurate, but 3D performance is, for graphics, 6.9 on our Samsung Series 7, and it's 6.2, a little closer there, on the Samsung Series 9. And the Samsung PM840 mSATA SSD that's in our Samsung Series 7 Ultra, which you think would be a great performer because Samsung SSDs have a great reputation, that gets a 7.8 versus the 8.1 for the Light-On 128 gig SSD in the Samsung Series 9, which is actually a better performer. And we'll take a look at the Crystal Disk Mark scores so you can see that difference. So here are our Crystal Disk Mark scores, and you can see who does better here, actually. Samsung Series 7 Ultra, they have similar read speeds here as we look at sequential reads, and the 512Ks, they're a little closer. This one gets a little bit slower, but look at the difference in the write speeds. Considerably faster on the Samsung Series 9. Write speeds are always nice to have fast, so there it is. A little bit faster overall. Now for our PC Mark 7 scores, our Samsung Series 7 Ultra is stock with the 4 gigs of RAM scored 4469. When we upgraded to 8 gigs of dual channel memory, that went up to 4690, so keep that in mind. And our Samsung Series 9 is at 4408, so on that particular synthetic benchmark, it's not particularly leading. Interesting that, huh? Both of these machines feel very responsive. They're quite fast. They're certainly up to Office, email, working with Photoshop, all that kind of stuff. The Samsung Series 9 actually feels a little bit more responsive because of that faster SSD drive. It boots up even a little quicker. I mean, they're both fast booting machines, but the Series 9 feels a little bit zippier, and it should, because it is the highest series machine that Samsung offers. When it comes to battery life, you think this would be a straightforward thing, right? But the interesting thing, again, with the Samsung Series 7 Ultra is because it has two personalities, shall we say. There's the US version with the integrated graphics, and then there's the overseas version with the dedicated AMD Radeon option. They went with a beefier battery just in case they were going to put dedicated graphics in this. So this actually has a 57 watt per hour battery, bigger than the 44 watt per hour battery that's in the Samsung Series 9. Now, if you end up with just the Intel HD 4000 graphics, what does that mean? You get even longer battery life. So swing, you can't lose with that, can you? 40 watt charger versus a 60 watt charger for the guy that has a little bit bigger battery. They're both very compact, so not much to talk about or worry about. They're a little bit bigger for the Samsung Series 7 Ultra charger, but still compact and small. We're still running our battery tests on our Samsung Series 9. But right now, it's actually looking like it may reach the 6-hour mark, which is pretty good for a machine that's excruciatingly thin like this. There's not so much room for a battery, and the Samsung Series 9 so far has not been a class leader for battery life in Ultrabooks, but I think it's going to hit 6 hours. Now, the Samsung Series 7 Ultra has no problem for me hitting the 6-hour mark, and sometimes going up to 6.5 hours, and that's with brightness set at 50%, not really toning it down any, and with Wi-Fi on, and mix of use, some streaming video, doing MS Office, doing email, doing web, that kind of thing. So I would give a little edge to the Samsung Series 7 Ultra for battery life, but the Series 9 is no slouch there. Both of these are the premium end of the line, so they both have backlit keyboards. They both have very large trackpads. I have to say that the trackpad on the Series 9, my God, it's perfection. It just always works for me. It's very responsive. The Samsung Series 7 Ultra is pretty good, but it's not wowzers. And that's okay because I can touch the screen too, so I can navigate that way, so it's not the end of the world for me. In terms of keyboard travel, well, they're both pretty shallow, but you're talking a little bit shallower on the Samsung Series 9 because it's skinny. Actually, I find both of them nice to type on. It's not like they feel great. They don't feel like a Lenovo ThinkPad awesome keyboard in terms of tactile feel and stuff, but it's amazing how well I can type on either of these. One thing I will give the Series 9 a big leg up for is just plain common sense usability. Look at that. Black keyboard, white masking, white backlighting. You can see that pretty easily in any lighting. Why Samsung keeps doing what they do with the Samsung Series 7, I don't know, which is, yeah, it's pretty, but here we have a silver keyboard with dark gray masking, so that's not going to stand out too well, even in good lighting. Yes, you can see it, but it's not super duper. And once you have the backlight coming on, and it's kind of in a dim room, not a totally dark room, the backlight can almost make it worse. I mean, because the key masking just blends into the color of the keys. It drives me a little bit nuts. Not a deal breaker for a lot of people, but still something to note. Give me a black keyboard, please, with white backlighting any day. Both machines have Bluetooth 4.0, and they both have stereo speakers. The Samsung Series 7 Ultra is going to win here. It's got JBL audio, and that's nice. Sometimes it's just branding more than anything else. But actually, it has two 2-watt speakers that are very loud and full and rich. They just don't sound like Ultrabook speakers. They sound great. Samsung Series 9 has two 1.5-watt speakers. They're still better than average speakers, especially for a thin and light Ultrabook, but doesn't sound nearly as good as the Samsung Series 7 Ultra in terms of volume and in terms of filling in the bass a little bit, as much as a thin notebook can. So now you've seen the comparison, and you see it's not an easy choice, is it? You're going to save a little money by getting the Samsung Series 7 Ultra. It's still a classy metal-clad machine with very nice specs on it. The big difference really is going to come down to the weight and the styling. How important is that to you? Because the Samsung Series 9 is one of the most gorgeous laptops on the planet right now, and also the lightest for a 13.3-inch Ultrabook. So if this is going to be your second machine, Ultra portability is the important thing. You don't care so much about having as many ports or full-size ports built in. The Samsung Series 9 is certainly that. If you need to impress people at a meeting, whatever it is, Nothing's going to look better than this guy. However, if you're looking for an all-arounder, the Samsung Series 7 Ultra really has what it takes because it's got that Ethernet port built in, more USB ports, a full-size HDMI port on it, a lot of stuff there, and also the upgradable internals. So the choice is up to you. Do you need the all-arounder? You don't mind the extra pound of weight, saving a couple $100 at the same time, or do you want as thin and light as possible? And don't forget the touchscreen, too. Touchscreens are pretty important with Windows 8. I know some of you hate them, but for those of you who don't, you get the touchscreen with the Ultra. You don't get the touchscreen with the Series 9. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review of each of these, watch our video reviews of each of these guys, and hit that like button.